Welcome, everybody, to Broadcast Team Alpha, where we bring you cutting-edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And we are so going to do it again tonight. I'm so excited about our guest. Augie's going to tell you about Ella in just a minute. But as always, I want to thank you guys. I see the conversation starting in the chat room. There's always good stuff that happens in there. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the love. And I also want to invite you to join us on Sunday at 2 p.m. at the Mastermind Connection. It's where we get together and do a big quantum manifestation process for all of the beautiful and benevolent things that we want to see in the world, in the universe. So at 2:00 on Sunday, we get together and we agree upon what we're going to manifest. Oftentimes it's personal for family, friends and pets, for healing, for the world, for weather patterns, and some pretty amazing things have been happening for a couple of years now. So to join us, all you have to do is send an email to themastermindconnection, all one word, at gmail.com, and Augie will send you the link, and you can just come hang out with us and see if it's something you'd like to put on your calendar every Sunday. Augie, please tell us about our guest, Ella.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is going to be so much fun. We have Ella LeBain with us. And I'm going to tell you a few things about her. But first of all, I want to give you her web address. So for those of you that like to surf the internet while you're listening, here it is. It is so appropriate because her website is who's who in the cosmic zoo.com. How much more appropriate can you get these days than that? That is wonderful. Now, Ella is an extraterrestrial experiencer, a UFO researcher, and an author with 5 books. And these books are Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, again, A Guide to ETs, Aliens, Gods, Angels, and Exoplanets. Now, she's also from New York, which I found out that both Nori and her, hey, they got something in common. And that she is also had her education in Israel. She got a social science degree from the Biological Research Center in Negev. I think I pronounced that right. Hopefully, if not, then forgive me. And that was a school in biblical Hebrew. That could bring out some interesting things. And then she got a degree in astronomy. And she also lived in South Africa under apartheid as a counselor. And that could have been very interesting. She realized after her close encounters with the extraterrestrial and the interdimensional beings that she needed to research and know more, and especially about the universe we are living in. And she's going to be here in Tucson in March, speaking at MUFON, so chances are I'll get to meet her. Maybe there's a cup of coffee with her name on it. So welcome to the show, Ella.
Welcome, Ella.
Thank you so much, Nori and Aggie. It's so nice to be here.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you here. And I just love the play on words that you use. And I think that clues us into your personality, which is so lovely. And I just love to ask people, how did this all come about for you? I mean, this isn't the normal 9 to 5, 2.5 kids, white picket fence kind of lifestyle. So how did this begin for you?
Well, yeah, great question. Well, it started off with, being an experiencer, and I just wanted to figure out what was happening to me, and sent me down lots of different rabbit holes. And then, I had several different types of experiences. It wasn't just one. So just in a nutshell, I was abducted out of my crib from the age of 2. I had implants. There was blood on the sheets. There was all kinds of stuff that basically uh, was indicative of alien abduction. And then then I lost my mother when I was 6 years old, so I became orphaned. My father was alive, but then he remarried this Jewish divorcee, and I ended up with the stepsister. So I'm real life Cinderella, and my history, my testimony, and my personal story is coming out in a book called Cinderella's Shadow. Okay, so and that's my story, because all this was to me shadow pieces, stuff that I had to heal, overcome, and a lot of it is just curses, generational curses, family curses, curses that are connected to the earth, connected to families, connected to religions.
Yes.
And my father was an Orthodox Jew, and my mother was an Italian Catholic. So, I grew up with a lot of Mishigas. Both religions are just as bad as each other, in my opinion. Wow. So I had to find the truth. And I believe that I wasn't alone in that search. And so it wasn't until I graduated from Sde Boker in Israel, and it was July of 1979, that I saw this being, 3:00 in the afternoon, broad daylight, 95 desert heat, come out of the sun and stand in front of me and say, "I am the Messiah, follow me." So I was like, my jaw dropped. I was gobsmacked. I don't know how to explain it. And so I did. And then I started researching him and trying to figure out what happened, why this, why that. And I was fascinated with end time prophecies. Even then, 18, because part of my curriculum was that I couldn't graduate without the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament, the Bible, because a lot of people, when you say the Bible, everybody goes, ooh, it's like a trigger, and they think it's all about religion. But it's to in Israel and to Jews, it's history. Okay, yes. So suffice to say, the Bible is a multi-layered record of our past. It's a historical record. It contains, like Christians will say, oh, the Bible is the Word of God from Genesis to Revelation. The Bible contains the Word of God. It also contains the words of evil kings and queens and Satan and other gods and other beings. Okay, so it's a historical record of extraterrestrial interventions, extraterrestrial contact, and policies, laws that were made, and consequences and stories that came out of all of that. So, like, for instance, in my second book, Who is God? I have this story, and it's very controversial, and I know it presses people's buttons and creates cognitive dissonance, but through my education of Hebrew, which was linguistics, okay? So I reading and writing was my thing. Speaking, not so much, because everyone in Israel wanted to practice their English on me. And I ended up being married to an Israeli too. And they all want to practice their English. So I didn't really get to have those deep conversations in Hebrew. So my focus was on the biblical narrative, because that's why I was tested and all this. So when I looked at all these things, I was like, wait a second. What it says in the English and what it says in the Hebrew are not the same thing. Okay. Yeah. In fact, the English Bible, for anyone who's an English speaker and they read the Bible and they've never heard of anything and they just go in and start reading from book to book, story to story, you walk away and you think it's all one God. Okay. It's not. It's a whole cast of characters. Okay. Yeah. And the English translations have covered that up. Okay. With title. So when you read the English, you only see two words, Lord and God.
Yes.
Okay, which are titles. God is a title. God is not a name. God is a name, which was an ancient pagan god of they worshipped him for good fortune. His name was God, and that's where we get the like, oh my God, people do that. That's like an ancient pagan thing. But God is a title. Lord are titles. There's many lords. There's many gods. So how do you discern who's who? So I went in and I started seeing names and realized, and first of all, Hebrew is a very specific language. So it's a language of physics. Each letter, 22 letters, this is where we get the word alphabet from in English, because it comes from Hebrew. The first two letters are alpha and bet. So there's 22 letters, and each of those letters are considered cosmic letters, and they represent the shape of the 22 major constellations.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a cosmic language. It's an extraterrestrial language. Okay, so the God of Israel is named 7,000 times, literally. Okay, I'm not even exaggerating. That is how many times his name is mentioned in the Old Testament, and it's completely covered up with the word Lord or God, mainly Lord. Okay, when you see his name, it's Lord. So I go into this whole history of why they did that. First of all, it started with the Masoretic Jews who were being held captive in Babylon for 70 years. It's that history. So the Sumerian was turned into Aramaic, and then Aramaic turned into Hebrew. So the Old Testament was originally written in Aramaic, which is kind of like ancient Hebrew, and the only major difference is that it doesn't have the vowels. Okay, so the dots and the dashes and the little marks that tell you how something is pronounced. So when the Masoretic Jews were in Babylon, they rewrote the Old Testament. Okay, the Torah. There wasn't a New Testament then anyway, but they rewrote it in with the vowels, and they did it for several reasons. But one reason, okay, that I uncovered through the history was to protect the name of the God of Israel, so that the Gentiles wouldn't use his name in vain, invoke his name. And this is all about this name. I mean, the stuff about his name is just, it's amazing. Okay. So I'm like, okay, fine. So here's what they did. They took the word Adonai, which means Lord, and the word Elohim, which means gods, plural with an S. And they took the vowels and they transposed it over the name of the God of Israel, which is what people call the tetragrammaton, the Yud-He, Uhe, which is pronounced Yahuwah. Okay, so the Germans call it Yahweh. That's not Hebrew. Later on, the Catholic Church called it Jehovah. Again, not Hebrew. There's no J in the Hebrew language. No J sound whatsoever. Okay, the letter J was inserted into the English language in the 1700s. We didn't even have that. The first King James Bible of 1611, when it was first published, didn't even have the name Jesus in it. It was Iesus, which was the Greek and the Latin form. So they basically switched out the I and created a J. So the name Jesus didn't exist until the 1700s. So the being that we call Jesus in Hebrew was called Yeshua, which comes from Yahuwah. So in Hebrew, that literally means Yahuwah is our salvation, because Yeshua is the name of the Father is in the Son. And I prove this through the letters in my second book, and you can see it, and it's like they're pictographs. So like this, the full name is Yahushua, which is all 7 letters. But Hebrew is famous for being poetic and truncating, like shortening things. So that's where it got shortened to Yeshua. Suffice to say, it's all part of the same thing. And, just like you and I, we all have nicknames that we're known by, right? Affectionate names, poetic names, and that is included as well. So when I saw all that, I thought, whoa, so this is more than what I was raised to believe. This is there's something else going on. And when I saw him, and I was like, whoa, you're the Messiah. And what did I didn't, I was just completely, so that's what started me down this whole, set of rabbit holes.
Wow. Amazing.
That was 1979. So many years have gone by since then.
Yes. So with everything that you have studied and with all of the information you have so generously shared in your books, what the heck is going on right now, Ella? What is going on, and what are the important things that we need to know about what's going on right now?
Yeah, all great questions, Nora. Well, we are at the end of what the Sumerians called the precessional age. Now, the Sumerians were the ones who established the precession of the equinoxes, as they're called.
Right.
26,000 years. So basically all of the 13 now, we have 13 major zodiac signs because they sort of squashed Ophiuchus in between Sagittarius and Capricorn. But so 13 times 2,000, it's 26, right? So there's 26,000 years for a full cycle, which, the Hindus, they call that the Kali Yuga. So we're at the end of this. We're at the end of like multiple cycles at once. So it's almost like if you can visualize a clock and how you have different, wheels, and they all seem to be lining up together at the same time. So just to break it down, so the precession of this age, the age of Pisces, has to do with the way they measured it had to do with the sun. So everything is about the sun, okay? And when the sun rises in the vernal equinox, first day of spring, in the stars of Aquarius, that's when we shift ages, okay? So so just like we're going forward, like right now we're speaking, it's we're in 26 degrees of Capricorn today. So in four more days we're going to shift into Aquarius, right? We go Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, air. We go forward, right? And how we measure our time because of the orbit of the Earth. However, the precession of the equinox goes backwards, okay? Because it's all based on this invisible circle that they call the equatorial plane, and it's how everything is viewed. So even like in the sidereal, like there's sidereal and tropical. So tropical is like we're on the Earth, we're measuring things from how we perceive it because we are looking at the sky from the Earth. The sidereal, which is basically Vedic, they've been using that for millennia. So they measure everything from the position of the sun. But we don't live on the sun, okay? We live on the Earth. So, but the precession of the equinoxes goes based on the sun, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So right now, where the sun is, when we are going to celebrate and move through our vernal spring equinox, is about 5 degrees. It's 5 degrees of Pisces. So we count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So there's 30 degrees for each sector of the sky, okay? Each, like it's a month, but it doesn't, we don't count 1 to 30, we count 0 to 29 because 0 is a point. So the 0 point is the official astronomical end of this age, okay? And then from 0, it goes to 29 Aquarius, which is the official beginning of the precessional age of Aquarius. So even though we've been singing about it since the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And And that's a wonderful thing. But here's how I explain that. It's like the hour before sunrise every day. So there's always like an hour of dawn, right? If you look out the window an hour before the sun is supposed to come up, you'll start to see a little light and you can watch it change, right? You watch the colors and all of a sudden it becomes brighter and brighter and brighter, but it's not really sunrise until the sun comes up over that horizon, right? So for an hour you got dawn. So that's relative to where we're at in terms of precessional ages, because that dawn hour can be related to 50 to 100 years on the precession. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So that's where we're at. We are approximately 50 to 100 years away from that. Okay. Now, is it a perfect science? Absolutely not. Because we have a heavy visitor, okay, that causes our planet to shift and change, and it can get knocked. Our Earth, it has a natural wobble to it, okay. Yes. So it's always wobbling, and that is how our day is cut up into 24 hours, but it's actually shortening. Okay, so every time the Earth gets knocked off its axis through these really strong earthquakes, 8s and 9s, and we're expecting 10s coming as well, and volcanic eruptions, the Earth shifts, it gets knocked, and the axis, it actually shortens our day. So, like, for instance, what happened in 2004, if you remember the tsunami, the Boxing Day tsunami, well, that was caused by a 9. That was a very intense earthquake, and it actually shaved like 25 seconds off of our day. So here's where we're at, okay? So here we are in 2024, and we have to catch up a whole day by adding a day to our calendar. And our calendar, which it's the Roman Gregorian calendar, which has absolutely no astronomical relevance whatsoever. Okay, right. So let me connect a dot for you and everyone. So in the Bible, in the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel, it talks about an antichrist. Okay, someone who goes against, who's in rebellion against the Almighty God, the God who created the heavens and the earth. Now, there's gods who created humans and gods who are messing with hybrids and mixing and matching and doing Nephilim and all that kind of stuff. This is not that God. This is the one who's in charge of the universe, the God of the universe, the King of the universe that Jews pray to. Like, every single prayer begins with the same sentence: "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe." So I'm like, who is this king? I want to know who he is. I want to know the king, okay? Because I'm like a spiritual Karen, right? So I don't want to go in between intermediaries because they mess up the message, right? It's like telephone. I want to go straight to the source. I want to talk to the Most High. So that was my it's been my journey to find out who that being is. And it's been a bit of, it's very, I understand the controversy. I understand the cognitive from both sides, being raised Jewish, going to Israel and all that stuff. I was rejected from my Jewish families because I saw Yeshua, who is Jesus. So, and I don't believe in him because anyone told me about it or witnessed to me or gave me gospel tracts or anything like that. I am a believer because I have seen him 6 times in my life. And yes, and one of them was a near-death experience, February 7th of 2010. Wow. So I can't forget my experiences. I can't forget what I was told. And that's why I do this research, because I kind of piece it together and I can look at it from both sides, because the Jews I mean, we can get into what's going on in Israel and what's the prophecy about, because the Jews rejected him for the most part. Okay. Now, I'm not the only Messianic Jew on the planet, thank God. Okay.
Right.
And that's all part of the end time prophecy is the Jews are supposed to return to the Lord. Okay. But they've been heavily punished, okay, persecuted for millennia because they rejected their Messiah, because they expected him to come on a white horse and put down the Romans and scoop him up and take him off and be the king. Well, that just because that didn't happen 2,000 years ago doesn't mean it's not going to happen at the end of this age, because that's exactly what the prophecy is written, both in the Old and the New Testament. So when I started looking at the New Testament and seeing, wait a second, this is like a right and a left leg. It matches. It walks together. You can't have one without the other. Well, that's when I lost my Jewish family and all my Jewish friends and my Jewish husband and all of that. They didn't want anything to do with me because Jews don't believe in Jesus. But he kept showing up to me. He kept appearing. He kept, and it was like, how could I deny that? And then I also was seeing the other beings, the grays and these little green, these little blue green troll type men, and then when I married my husband, now I've been married for 33 years. He's a Brit. He's from England. So that's when I started seeing the human ETs, because they were connected to him, which we call the Nordics or the blondes, but they're not all blonde. There's some of them are brown hair. They look just like Huggy over there. They have that same brown hair. They're not all blonde. So to call them all blondes is a little misnomer, but they're human. They wear these like very tight spacesuits, mainly blue. That's what I've seen. They've shown up. They showed up right when I started dating my my now husband from England. So I realized they were connected to him. And that's kind of like what started me on this ETs, aliens, or angels things. I was teaching classes in Florida for like 5-6 years in the 90s. And then I took those classes and turned them into the first book. I mean, the first book kind of got shelved for a while because I had a baby, and who could write a book with a baby? So then as soon as she got a little, more independent, I took it off the shelf, and then I started writing it again. So when I started getting it ready for publication, 2008, 2009, I was going through all this drama, okay, with, long story short, with these neighbors, and I was having all this trauma, and I wasn't sleeping, and so long story short, February 7th of 2010, I ended up in the hospital with a heart attack. It wasn't my heart. It was the adrenal exhaustion, because I wasn't sleeping. So too much, cortisol was going through my blood, and that caused the heart to go to like 185 and then blacked out. So that actually changed everything for me. Okay. Yeah. Because what I saw, what I heard, what I was told has ended up now in this book series. So I was, first of all, I saw my parents, I saw my mother and my father, and they're both deceased. And I thought, oh my God, I must be dead, because I haven't seen them together ever, not even in a dream. Okay. Right. And then someone took my hand, okay, and it was Yeshua. Okay. I mean, I undeniable. And it was just him and I on this emerald green field with this bluebird sky. That's it. No one was around. It was just him and I. And I believe, looking back on that it was like some in-between, dimension between here and there. Obviously, I wasn't ready to completely pass over. And he told me, you're going to be okay. I'm going to help you. I want you to make changes here, going to make changes there. And I want you to rewrite your book with me in it. Because even though I had these experiences with him along the years, I got really disenchanted from the churches. I was like, I was victim of anti-Semitism. It's like, they didn't accept me in the churches. The Jews didn't accept me because I believed in Jesus. The churches didn't accept me because I was Jewish. So where do I go? So I became an astrologer. Okay. And I had a great time. I had 25 years doing astrology. I had a great time. That's how I met my husband on a cruise ship. Okay.
Very nice.
Yes, but that all changed with the near-death experience, and here's why. This is what I have to tell you. So he told me a lot of stuff. All of it is been processed and published in these books. I have one more book left to complete the series, which I hope to get out this year. Okay, but that was the first book I started with, and I shelved it. So it's kind of like that saying, "The last shall be first, and the first shall be last." You know that?
Okay.
I think Jesus said that. It's in the Bible. Anyway, that was my astronomy book. Because when I went to astronomy classes, okay, at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, that's where I got my just a basic. It was just a level 1 astronomy degree. I met this astrologer she was like the astrologer to the stars. Like, she was doing all this. She was sitting next to me. Well, we became fast friends. She's passed over now. Her name was Debbie Kempton Smith. She wrote the book Secrets from a Stargazer's Notebook. She was so funny. She was just such a great person. Okay, I learned so much from her. So one thing led to another, and she mentored me, and she gave me a gig to do at the Princeton University in New York, and it was like a sink or swim. And it was like, well, either you can do readings for these college kids or not. And I swam. So that was the beginning of my astrology career. And I've always been sort of like scientifically based, not the woo-woo stuff, not the, it's psychic. No, it was all based on calculations and charts and this and that. But without getting too into the rabbit hole there, I have this near-death experience, and I don't do astrology anymore because of that. And here's why. Because they're missing pieces, okay? They're missing planet. They're missing planet. So Yeshua told me not only to rewrite my books with him in it, but that he was returning, and his return to Earth was going to coincide with the return, with the passing, with the flyby of Nibiru. Okay, that doesn't mean he comes from Nibiru. It's gonna coalesce together. Okay, remember I was telling you about all these wheels within wheels all happening at the same time, and that's the big shift. That's the click on the dial, multiple dials, and it's all about this. So then I started, and I met Zacharias Sitchin in 1995. I was able to sit down and interview him at that time. I thought I was going to do interviews, and I still have it. I published it. It's in my 5th book, and I learned all this stuff from him. Okay, and if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be calling it Nibiru. Okay, because he pulled that out of the translations. I realize how controversial he is. He was a wonderful man, so kind, so humble, so brilliant. Okay, he knew 5 languages fluently, and he wrote 12 books. So, he passed in 2010, and he was threatened. This is in my book about what happened to him. He was threatened by the powers that be. And I want to tell you about this because this is about the cover-up. Not to tell anyone in his lectures when. Don't give dates about when Nibiru was going to pass. So his whole career seemed to have, culminated in this meeting with the chief astronomer, Robert S. Harrington, who was the chief astronomer of NASA. Okay, when his office was in Washington, D.C., and they're all about the space tech. So everything that they were doing was all based on the tech. They were, tracking this and tracking that. And so he agreed to have a meeting. And so Sitchin and him compared notes. So Sitchin is coming from the past, and the calculations that he extracted out of the Sumerian material, and Harrington is coming from the present with all the space tech. And they literally collaborated, okay? And they were so close. They agreed on almost everything except for like one little discrepancy between Virgo and Libra, because they all agreed that we call it the heavy visitor, is going to come in from the southwest up over the equator, and that's how it enters into it. Now, so in 1983, NASA sent IRIS out to the edge of the solar system, okay, which was this imaging radiographic, this was this probe, and it came back with a photograph of Nibiru, okay, which is this gigantic planet that has wings, just like the ancients depicted on the walls of the ancient temples, the Egyptian temples, in Persia, the Zoroastrian, it's Iraq, Mesopotamia, red, the big red disc with the wings. Why was it always depicted with wings? It's not real wings. They're comet tails. Okay. They come, so the planet itself is gold in the core. It's like golden, but it's surrounded by red iron oxide, which is why it appears red. And then I started like, okay, wow, where is it? So I started looking things up. It's in the Torah, it's in the Zohar, and it's called the red messianic star, because when it appears in the heavens and people start seeing it, that's how they know that's a harbinger that the Messiah is coming. That's why they called it the red messianic star. But the Greeks, they called it Hercules. The Chinese, they called it the red dragon, because that's what it looked like to them, because it has these tails. And and then in the 1940s, a very important astronomer Carlos Muñoz Ferrada. He was so accurate in all of his predictions about it. He called it Hercules, but he also called it the comet planet. I mean, he took the Greek name, but he made his own nickname for it, and he called it the comet planet. So it is a real planet, but it acts like a comet. However, it's a little opposite to what we have been trained to believe about comets. So how comets go in with the head and the tail follows. The tails come first, like a procession, like a parade. Like the parade comes first, and then comes the heavy visitor. So I did all this research. I found out, whoa, this is something that's just like, this could be the reason why the end time prophecies, like Joel 2:31, for instance, and the sixth seal in the book of Revelation, has to do with, both of them say that the sun is going to go dark and the moon is going to go red. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. And the moon is going to go red. And Christians got really lost in all that with these blood moons, and it's like, oh God, that's another reason why I sort of pulled away from all of them, because they just go a little nuts, because they're not looking at stuff and they think, it's a blood moon, it's a Jewish holiday, the rapture's going to happen. And it's like, no, that's why I don't make dates, because they've been doing that for so long. They've been causing people to just turn off. They just tune them out, because every time they make a prediction, it doesn't come true. I'm not that person. Okay, that's why I don't make dates, because the time itself is changing. Okay, so even though we're on this, calendar, that doesn't mean that it's going to stay the same. So even the book of Revelation, how that was written. First of all, that was written separate from the rest of the Bible. It was added to the Bible, okay? And at the very end of it, it says, if you take anything out of this book or change anything, it's like a curse. They added it to the Bible canon when they edited everything. But that was written separately. And it was written out of order for a reason. For a very good reason, was to fool the God of this world in terms of the plans of the Lord and his return. So he he gave it to John, and it was outside of time. So Andy and I, we talked about time and all the manipulations, time travel, time slips, all this stuff, calendar shenanigans. But this is like, even Einstein said, it's like a fourth dimension. He can see the whole timeline, how it's going to happen. So he gave him these pieces of all these different events that were that have, some of them have already happened. We can check them off, and others haven't actually manifested yet, but we're in process. And some of it is just completely astronomical. The Christians have misinterpreted things to think that, oh, it means this and it means that and all this stuff. It's like, it means that the skies are going to change. Right. The sun is changing. And why? What is causing that to happen? The Nemesis Nibiru system. So Nibiru is only one of 7 planets that belong to Nemesis. So, when I was 8 years old, I used to go out on my roof, and watch the sunset in New York. Okay.
Yes.
So, and as a child, I used to think, gee, I wonder if there's another Earth. Right? That's just like us. I wonder if, maybe there's a better Earth, because I lost my mother. I didn't have such a great childhood. So this is my child imagination.
Right.
And how did I know that I was going to actually find the answer to that? There is. Okay. So we weren't taught this in school. None of us were taught that we are a binary system, but we are. This is what I prove it. I'm going to show pictures. It's in the space telescopes. It's written in the ancient writings. This is what planet Earth is about. It was held from us mainly because people didn't know about it. It was ignorance, and also because the binary twin, which is a brown dwarf, and that's what we call Nemesis, has been behind our sun for thousands of years, so nobody saw it. But it moves, just like all the stars move. They dance. They do this kind of like back and forth, and it moves, and it comes out from behind the sun. And because it's a brown dwarf, it's dead. It doesn't radiate light, but all it needs is our sun to shine its light on it, to illuminate it, and it looks like 2 suns. So I have a lot of pictures and proving this from all over the planet, from space telescopes. And so in 2017, we had one of these big disclosures that came out besides the UFO stuff. And this is all connected to the UFO. I was telling you about Iris. I'm sorry I got a little sidetracked. I was telling you stuff. But so in 1983, Iris comes back with this picture of this gigantic planet with wings. They bring it to President Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan looks at it, meanwhile, and he's like, this has to be covered up. We can't let the people know about this. So him and that famous trio, Gorbachev and Maggie Thatcher, the 3 of them got together, looked at all this, saw what was coming, that the planet was going to change, there was going to be climate change, warming, all of that, and they had to cover it up. So how did he do it? With an executive order. So this executive order that he authored in 1983 had to do with deleting all talk or words about Nibiru. Now, meanwhile, Sitchin's books were published. They were out since the 1960s. Okay,
12th planet,
right. So when he when he met Harrington, I think in 1992, 93, in the early 90s. I could be wrong on that date. I met him in 95, and this had already happened. This was the history. So I think it was 92, 93. Anyway, it's in my book. He meets with him. They collaborate. They agree on all this stuff. They make it public. And within 6 months, Harrington, 50 years old, perfectly healthy, comes down with some rare form of esophageal cancer and dies. Just like that. And Sitchin was clearly shaken. Okay. And he was told by the powers that be, you don't talk dates in your lectures, otherwise we'll shut you down. That's why every time he did a lecture, the big question was when? And he would never, and he was always very tight-lipped about that. And he would say, well, it's not coming in my lifetime. And he was right, because he passed in 2010. But it's coming in it will be in our children's lifetime. Let's put it that way. I don't know. You and I were all a part of the same generation. So it's on its way. And we are seeing the sister planets around the sun almost on a daily basis. I mean, every month we have multiple pictures of these planets because they interlope and intersect. So what's happening is that it's causing perturbations on the sun. The magnetism, it's pulling plasma. There's plasmic exchanges happening with this system and our sun, which is causing our sun to literally fall apart. Okay, if you look at what's been going on this past year, it's unprecedented, and they're not talking about it. So anyway, I know I've gone on enough, but go ahead, ask a question.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No, this is wonderful, Karen. It's wonderful, Ella. Couple of questions.
What happened? The sound went.
Oh, well, we can hear you now.
I hear you. I don't hear Nori.
Yeah. I don't know.
The only thing I heard was a couple of questions.
That's strange.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you too.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
There you are. Yes. Okay,
there she is.
So, what did Yeshua look like? Who is the heavy visitor? And Margaret in the chat room, thank you, Margaret, for the super chat, is curious about the nasal implant. Did you receive a nasal implant?
I did. Yes, I did. Okay, well, it's gone. So after my near-death experience in 2010, it disappeared. Now, that nasal implant caused me a lot of trouble all my life. I had chronic allergies, sinus issues, headaches, migraines, and after I went through, and it took me about 1.5 years to completely heal from the condition that caused the near-death experience, but in that process, everything got cleared up. So I'm turning 63 this month, and thank God, healthy as a horse. So all gone. I don't have in fact, I had allergies to foods. Like I couldn't have gluten, I couldn't have dairy. I was allergic to allergens out there. Cats, I can't live without my cats. They're all over me. I eat gluten, I eat dairy every day without issue. I'm completely healed of all that because that implant was removed. And I really believe it was all connected to that.
And then, what about
what did Yeshua look like?
Please.
So if I could, there's some pictures out there that I would say, yes, that's really close. Suffice to say, he shapeshifts. So when I saw him come out of the light, everything was light. So it wasn't defined like I'm looking at you because you're human and we can describe you as you have this color hair and that color eyes. But when I saw him during my near-death experience, and I've seen him 6 times, he has this sort of like light brown hair, brown eyes. He looks typically Israeli, Semitic. He's not black, but he's not white. So, kind of olive tone, Jewish, classic Jewish nose, and, long hair and the beard and very kind. And it's not like, oh, focusing on specific features, but just hearing him and feeling this love and compassion and kindness. And he's so pithy, something I'm always working on becoming, because I'm a little long-winded. I apologize, but he's so pithy, and he says things and that's it. And it's just cuts through the air, cuts through. And sometimes he would show up at the foot of my bed, touch when I was going through my healing, and touch my toe to kind of like get my attention and say like one sentence and disappear. Yeah. So he's known on the record for being an original shapeshifter. Like he would just disappear and show up. The disciples actually reported that. He would just show up, right?
Yeah, they spoke of that. Mm-hmm.
Just come in and then leave. And, there's all this, around the ascension and, and the transfiguration. So there's a lot of, he can come and go and, look like bright white light, almost like an X-ray, where you don't see any color except white. And sometimes you see him, because let's face it, he was a demigod. Okay. He was half man, half God. Right. And they argued about that. That was the whole Nicene Council. How much of him was the son of man versus how much he was the son of God. So sometimes, he was human, and other times he's God. So God-like, or he was God. He was put, according to the scripture and the word, he was put in charge over it all. Okay. So he was the one who was given that crown as king to be the Lord of this earth. But this earth, so he showed me about the battle, that this is, I really didn't have much. I mean, I knew life is hard and everything is like, and we'll be slugging through stuff, but I didn't have the discernment that I did after the NDE, because he showed me about the spiritual battle that's over all of us. And Ephesians 6:12, my first book, unpacks that one scripture. We war not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, rulers of the darkness of this present world, and spiritual wickedness in the heavens. And my question was, who are those beings? So that's what I unpack in my book. And the Bible talks about the God of this world, who they call Satan. Well, Satan is a Hebrew word for adversary or rebel. It's not necessarily a name, although you can call it, it's been watered down like that, but he has many names, and there's a group of them. So that's why I pluralize it in my book, because there's not just one. And one thing about Satan that's very different than God. God is omnipresent. He can be with you, with me, at the same time.
Yes.
Satan can't. He doesn't have that superpower, because he's not the God of gods. He's the God of this world, but he's not the God of gods. The God of gods puts him down. So this whole battle is over us, over humans, over the earth. And when Yeshua returns, the curse that was put on the earth and humans, men, women, animals, the earth itself, gets lifted. And when that gets lifted, that's the beginning of the age to come, which has also multiple names: the Golden Age, the Aquarian Age, the precession of the equinox, and the millennial reign of Christ on earth. And the song from the Fifth Dimension, the age of Aquarius, where there's brotherhood and understanding and peace on earth. That's then, because the curse is removed. So when the curse is broken, then there's no more, sorrow and pain and tears and fighting and contention and all the stuff that is our history here and has been now. And so he showed me which group of beings are facilitating that. And that is this presence. And that's why it's called an alien presence, because people think, oh, we're going to have an alien invasion. They're going to come from outer space and land on the planet. No, they're already here. Great invasions happen in secret, and they've been here for millennia. And each time there's a flood, they go under. They go underground, they go inside the earth. The earth is separated into 11 dimensions. 5 of them are mentioned in the Bible. So we know that there are breakaway civilizations underground. We also know that there's a group of beings that we call the draconians, the reptilians, the dracs, the lizard men. And then there's another group called giants. And grays, grays are like computers. Okay. They're a dime a dozen. Anyone you can have a computer. I can have a computer. And all these beings can have grays because grays are like clones. They're cybergenetic Borgs. And people get very focused on the grays because they're the ones that show up during abductions, but they're just following orders. So when I had to disentangle myself from their, what I went through and the contracts and the agreements I had to break, okay, that's why I got the implant. That's why it's gone, because I broke it. I got rid of them. It was who was controlling them. It was who they were. And I unpack this and discern this in my first book, that they just follow orders. They're like a hive mind mentality. So if you give them an order that they doesn't go compute into their programming, they drop you like a hot potato, because it's not what they were told to do. So they're not the top of the hierarchy. The hierarchy is in this what I'm talking about with is the reptilians. The reptilians use us to harvest loosh. And loosh has been a term that has been used to describe our soul energy. So just like we raise cattle, and why do we raise cattle? Why do we keep them going? And this is something the globalists don't want you to do anymore, because they want to guilt trip everyone. And this is what just came out of COP28, and it's been going on since the Inconvenient Truth. They want to guilt. This is what happened that came out of this executive order. The executive order, let me just unpack this and just don't let me forget to tell you about what happened from the COP28. So the executive orders usually get carried over by the other presidents, unless it's like a whole different thing. So each president that came after Reagan, it went into national security. The national security had to do with the UFO cover-up as well, because what was Reagan what came out of the Reagan years, he called it the Star Wars program. The truth is stranger than fiction. And it was the SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, which Reagan dubbed Star Wars. And that all is under national security. So is the UFO cover-up, and so is the Nibiru cover-up. And in my opinion, according to what I have seen and put together, the Nibiru cover-up and the UFO cover-up are married. And when you want to pull a string out of a sweater, you're going to unravel both at the same time. You can't have one without the other. So we are in disclosure right now. We have been in disclosure since 2017, which started under the Trump administration. So here's what happened. So all the presidents that went after Reagan, then Obama came in, and everyone petitioned him all over the place to talk about Nibiru. But Obama said no. And he slipped it back in to his executive orders that was all tightly wrapped up with the Obamacare bill. And if you guys remember the famous Nancy Pelosi statement when everyone said, "What's in the bill?" And she said, "We don't know. We won't know. We have to pass it first before we can read what's in it." Remember that? I mean, that was broadcast all over the place, and people went, "What?" It was like several feet high. So they slip all these things in. Some people call it pork, but it's also orders and rules and policies and this, that, and the other thing. And so what he did was he just carried it over. He didn't change it. He didn't undo it. But it became part of the Obamacare package. So guess what happened on day one when President Donald Trump gets into office? It was his first order was to unravel, unpack, dismantle Obamacare. And when he did that, pop, then came out the Nibiru stuff, which got loose.
Yes.
And I have all of this material here that has now freed all of us to talk about it.
Yep. And I see now that we are down to the end of the show. So
glad I got that.
I had a bunch of questions that I was going to ask you, but you were going off all these rabbit holes that I love to find the rabbit down at the end of, and you found them. So I really enjoyed it. But gosh, could we have you come back so I can at least ask some of those questions?
I would love to. And I'm so glad I got this in. I just want to say one thing. The globalists want to guilt trip everyone that it's us, our fossil fuels, and our cows and our farming that is causing the climate change. It is not. It is about the sun. We are not responsible for what goes on the sun. And this is what they've been holding back from everyone. So if you understand how the sun governs everything, the magnetosphere is cracked. Every time we have a solar flare, it comes in and it's causing climate changes. That means one part gets warm, one part gets cold. It's not all warming, but eventually that will happen. And the geoengineering, we didn't get to talk about that, but you guys know about that. So don't buy the manipulation. It's not our fault. We are not causing this.
Yeah. You know what happened anytime they move their lips. So
yeah.
I know in fact, on the NASA website, there was a document probably about 4 years ago that said that the reason for the warming is that the sun is putting out more infrared radiation than it has been doing before. And then they took the document down later on.
Well, that is part of the truth.
Yeah.
The sun is not just the infrared radiation, the solar flares, the coronal mass ejections, and the fact that the magnetosphere is cracked. So the magnetosphere is our protective bubble and from radiation from space, so it's now seeping in, which is warming up the planet.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Gosh.
Well, you have to come back in the very near future, please.
I would love to. It was so good to talk to you both. Thank you so much for.
Yeah, this was great. Oh, I got a question for you. Oh, this is a good one. Ella, if you could talk to the whole world and the world is listening, what would you tell them?
Get your heart and soul right with the Creator God. And call on the name of Yeshua to be saved. Because it's not about this life, it's about what happens next.
Yep.
And your soul lives on, and it can live on in hell, or it can live on and not everybody, people think everybody goes on the other side and they all go to the same place. That's not the case. There's a movie that came out that documented that. There were people who had near-death experiences that were not positive. So we have to look at that data and see that, it really has to do with not what you know, but who you know. And he created you. So if he created you, you got to stay close to him. And unfortunately, people have had a lot of problems with their parents, and children look at parents like God, and they couldn't trust their father, so they can't trust God. And people have to just work through that stuff.
Yeah.
Because in the end, when the parents go, it's just you and God, your creator. He created you, and he gives you breath every day, right? One day you're here, next day you're not. It's that quick it can happen.
Let's talk more about that next time.
Okay, sure. I'm not religious, but I am in a relationship. Just like, you and I now, we're in a relationship. There's different types of relationships.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
beautiful.
That's how I frame it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It was such a great conversation tonight, and we'll have Ella back really soon. The chat room was really busy, Ella, so everybody loves you. And Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo.com. I looked at all her books over there. I'm going to go make some purchases. And Ella, they can find you personally through your website. You have a contact page there? Or?
Yes, I do. And it comes straight to my email. And I'm also on Amazon on all the channels. And you can also contact me on Facebook.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Mel.